Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Civil Law. And good news today, this morning, as Daniel Penny has been found not guilty on count 2 for the criminally negligent homicide. Outstanding. I think this was an obvious not guilty verdict. The jury spent 4 days trying to figure out whether or not he was guilty of manslaughter, and then apparently came to a very quick conclusion that he's not guilty of criminally negligent homicide, which legally doesn't really make very much sense, by the way, just for the record, because if he is guilty of criminally negligent, or, well, no, the other way around. If he is guilty of manslaughter, he must be guilty of criminally negligent homicide. And if he's, so I'm not quite sure how they were able to get to a not guilty so fast. Like how it's like, if he's not guilty of count 2, he must be not guilty of count 1, because count 2 is a lesser included. So how are you hung up on count 1 is what I'm trying to say. Like, if he's not guilty of count 2, he must be not guilty of count 1, because count 1 includes count 2. And so by the nature of it being included, if the answer is no, then it must be no. It doesn't make any sense. So how can they be hung as to count 1 and be like, oh yeah, just not guilty as to count 2? That legally doesn't make very much sense. I'm not sure what it says about this jury or anything else, except to say I'm very confused. But that's where we're at. So anyways, yeah, the jury didn't understand something, or maybe juries aren't that great, or yeah, or they were just so, or the only other conclusion that you can really draw is that they're just so pissed by like whatever, they're like basically F it, which they don't really think not guilty. They're just basically like F it, F the judge, F you for making me be here, I hate you. So it's just basically an F you, but it's an F you that benefits the defendant, so that's fine. And so basically, it's kind of like a nullification, kind of. It's kind of like jury nullification, sort of. It's not that they necessarily don't think that he did it. They're just so pissed that they don't care. Anyway, so maybe it's that. Yeah. Either that, or they like either that, or they understood that if they came back hung, they're probably getting another Allen charge, and they're like, I just want to all go home. So the I want to go home vote won the end of the day. So there you go. Either they don't understand, or they're pissed, or they reasonably came to the conclusion that if they said we're still hung, that they'd get another Allen charge and they wouldn't be allowed to leave. They're like, maybe if we say not guilty, we can go home. So maybe one of those things. But I'm just pointing out that from a strict legal posture, it doesn't make much sense. But that's okay. It doesn't have to make sense. It benefits the defendant, and I think the defendant is incredibly not guilty. I think this was self-defense, defense of others, through and through. I keep saying self-defense because I just consider them one and the same. Strictly speaking, it's not self-defense, it's defense of others. But, well, I guess it could be both, to be quite honest. But either way, it is a good and glorious verdict, and I'm sure there's going to be many upset people from Black Lives Matter who will be upset about many, many things. And I'm just trying to get the inner city press feed up right now so we can sort of go what's going on. How do I like see all tweets like in chronological order? I think this is the way to, well, this is reverse chronological order. Let's see if I can pick this up from this morning in reverse chronological order. Okay, yeah, so this picks it up. So yeah, all right, here we are. So this is 9:39 Eastern time, so this is an hour ago. Judge Wiley enters the courtroom stage left, not yet in black robe. Morning, Judge. Protesters are chanting on the street and can be heard. On Friday, the ADA said the prosecution was asking you to dismiss count 1. with prejudice, which was basically implicit anyway. With prejudice just means it can't be recharged. I saw this as a question that people asked in someone's chat. I was like, what's the difference between with prejudice and without prejudice? And a part of me is like, well, it's on the label. It's like, what is prejudice? Prejudice means to prejudge. That's what prejudice is. It's prejudgment. So it's when you say you're doing something with prejudice, it means you've judged it in advance. And in this case, the answer is no. So it's like, so the answer is no. Like, no matter what you say, the answer is no. But what about this? No. But what about this other thing? No. We have a confession. No. We've got DNA. No. We've got, whatever. The answer is no. Anything you say, I say no. So like, yeah, that's with prejudice. But anyway, so they dismissed it with prejudice, which was implicit anyway. It's interesting also because someone else commented about this and I hadn't thought about it till I think it was Branca who said it originally, that this concept of with prejudice or without prejudice was more like a civil law concept, and it has somewhat bled over into the criminal law world, which I think that's kind of true. We didn't used to really talk about without prejudice or without prejudice. It's not like something that's foreign to my mind. It's just not for vernacular we're used to using. But we started using it in the criminal law context, and that's fine. I have no problem with it. It's like we had other concepts, or we just didn't use it with that label. We had sort of the concept, but not the label. We've decided to label it, and that's fine too. But anyways, they said that they were going to dismiss with prejudice, which was implicit. And they told the jury that they were dismissing count one without explaining anything else, which I think is correct, right? Just tell them count one is no longer within your consideration. Move to count two. You don't need to tell them anything else. I think that's right. And then, as of 8 minutes ago, the judge said, "Come to order. You saw the jury's note. We have a unanimous verdict as to count two." The ADA come back in the courtroom, walking around whispering, now goes back in the hallway. They've reached a verdict on count two, not guilty. Yeah. Clerk, how do you find Daniel Penny on count two, not guilty? From Penny said. There was applause. Be quiet. From Neely's side, go be killed. Out. From Neely's side, it's a small world, buddy. It's a racist country. So we're making open threats in court now. That's nice. We've got people making threats in open court. That's fun and exciting. That's fun and exciting. So that is some good stuff, man. That is some good stuff. And we will stay tuned for, I'm sure, what will be some exciting press conferences. Possibly from Black Lives Matter. Possibly we'll stay tuned and watch the riot. We could be staying tuned and watching lots of fun things tonight together. We'll see. But I'm very happy with this verdict. I think it was completely legally correct. I think this was defense of others. There was plenty of witnesses who said, I've been riding the subway for 25 years, 30 years. I've never seen anyone as threatening as this. I've never seen anyone. I was scared in a way that I've never or rarely been scared before. This guy was saying that he, wasn't afraid to go to jail, wasn't afraid to be killed, all the rest of it. I was scared for my life. And Daniel Penny used what seems to my mind to be a reasonable amount of force. I don't even necessarily think it was deadly force, not necessarily. He did, well, whether or not he died from the force is actually debatable. But assuming for the sake of argument that he did die from the force, that doesn't necessarily make it deadly force. That death occurred doesn't necessarily mean the force itself was deadly. At least to me. I think those are like slightly distinct concepts. Like deadly force is the amount of force that is, probably or very likely going to cause death or grievous bodily harm, or at least there's a substantial chance there too. So there's some sort of threshold there where it's not deadly force, but still results in death. And either way, I think it was justified. I think it was completely justified through and through. And I think he's a hero. And I've heard that at least one member of Congress has nominated him for the Congressional Gold Medal. And I think he deserves it. I think he deserves a prize and a ticker tape parade and the thanks of a grateful nation. Possibly a position in the Trump administration of some kind. I'm not sure what that would be, but I'm down for whatever they want to do in terms of that. That'll be fine. And hopefully Daniel can get on with his life to some degree. Although my first step, if I were Daniel, would probably be moving out of New York. Mostly because they don't want you there, Daniel. At least the DA doesn't. They think you're a bad person, man. Maybe come to Texas where, you know, they'll like you better. So, just a thought. Also, there's a lot of places cheaper than New York. I just would like to point out.
When everybody was talking about stop Asian hate, black hate crimes against black people doubled.
That's right.
Every single year, the group with the most hate crimes committed against them are black people. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. All of these people can tell all the lies they want, but when you look at the facts, America is a racist place that celebrates and funds to the tune of $3 million. Funds the killing of black people. Danny Penny had...
You know, if that were true, if America were a racist place that hates black people, and it were also true that America funds it to the tune of $3 million a year, I would say that America isn't trying very hard. $3 million from the United States budget? Are they even trying? Are they even trying?
Alternatives. He could have put him in an arm bar. He could have pushed him. For God's sakes, he could have used his words. He went straight to lethal force. He went straight to lethal force. So the fact of the matter is, Danny Penny counts on Jordan Neely from behind. 30 seconds later, the subway door opened. No one else was on the train. The next two people came on the train, came to help Danny Penny. Danny Penny died.
Go get it, Marines. Go get it, Marines. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the Marines are okay. The Marines are okay. You're not all a bunch of crown-eating miscreants. Some of you are all right.
That's one lie. He said, I only held him for 2 seconds. That's another lie. Have any of you heard how Danny Penny described Jordan? He said he was a dirty crackhead. This ain't me saying it. This is a police statement. How did you decide Jordan? How did Daniel Penny describe Jordan Neely's actions to the police? He said he was doing things that crackheads do. That's racism. That's stereotypical.
The Marines do have like probably the best dress uniform though. Yeah. Yeah. The Marines dress uniform is the best dress uniform, so we'll give them that point. Yeah. Navy whites. The Navy whites aren't really doing it for me, man. I have to be honest. Yeah, I'm just not feeling the Navy whites. Also, that just feels like a stain magnet, man. That just feels like trouble.
Let me tell you something. All of these people can tell all the lies they want, but when you look at the facts, America is a racist place that celebrates and funds to the tune of $3 million.
I also like the Marines because, well, the Navy, the Army also trains in my state, so I shouldn't have said that. But it's like, well, I was about to say, well, the Marines train in my state. I was like, yes, they do, because they train near Charleston. But the Army also has a major training facility in Fort Jackson, which is in Columbia. So, well, but I like low country, so we'll give that point to the Marines too. They've got a nice, they've got a very picturesque training place. Fort Jackson's like in the middle of Columbia. It's kind of like, but you know, the Marines are on the coast, man. It's nice with the fresh air. It's nice.
Killing of black people. Right. Danny Penny had alternatives. He could have put him in an arm bar. He could have pushed him. For God's sakes, he could have used his words.
He could have used his words. He could have used his words. I know Mom told me to use my words and all, but I'm not sure that this is a use your words kind of situation. He could have used his words just out of raw curiosity. What words could he have used? What words could he have used? It's like, have you considered not being a drug-infused, tyrants? Have you thought about maybe that? I'm not sure this is a words kind of situation. Maybe the Marine Corps as a whole just has it wrong. The Marine Corps just needs to use their words. Yeah, that's definitely what the Marine Corps is known for. The Marine Corps is definitely known for the use their words.
Lethal force. Yeah. He went straight to lethal force. The fact of the matter is, Danny Penny counts on Jordan Neely from behind. 30 seconds later, the subway.
What caliber are the words? That's a very good question.
Next two people came on the train, came to help Danny Penny. Danny Penny lied to the That's one lie. He said, I only held him for 2 seconds. That's another lie. Have any of you heard how Danny Penny described Jordan?
I learned new words from the Marine Corps. That is a fair point. That is a fair point. When it comes to the creation of new words, the Marine Corps does tend to lead that charge. The words tend to be rather blue, but they definitely are masters of the creation of new words, often by the combination of 2 or 3 other words, often with a, what's it called? It's called a something infix. It's called a pejorative infix, I think it's called. Yeah, I think it's called a pejorative infix when you say something like abso-fucking-lutely. Now I've explained this with more grammar than was legally required, but I'm happy to help. It is a chilling effect. It is absolutely 100% a chilling effect. I couldn't agree with that more in chat. I still think that this is a massively bad prosecution from a matter of policy, because you have done nothing but discourage the good people of New York from intervening in situations. You've done nothing but say to them, if you try to intervene, you may wind up being prosecuted by the district attorney. So, when inevitably it's going to happen like tomorrow, it is. Well, maybe not literally, but close enough. Whether it's tomorrow or 3 months from now or 6 months from now or something, there's going to be some situation where a black person probably is going to be, being threatened by somebody, and probably some white guy who could have helped and maybe videotapes it, but is just laughing at it and be like, well, why didn't the white guy intervene? Why didn't the white guy intervene? And it'll be like, maybe because he watched Daniel Penny, maybe because he's not an idiot. So this entire prosecution was batshit from a matter of public policy. Oh, we got some statements. We got a little press conference action. All right, let's watch this press conference action. This is exciting. Oh, I know what's happened. Women have been assaulted on a bus and not helped. I know it's absolutely happened. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen people on Twitter say things like that. Woman is attacked on a bus. Woman with a brick. Why did no one help? Why did no one help? Yeah, I wonder why no one helped. It's so hard to figure out. It's so hard to figure out.
Pass that down.
All right, just for names, this is Andre Zachary. This is Jordan Neely's father. This is Christopher. I'm Dante Mills. We're devastated, upset, angry, hurt. Over and over again, we keep coming to the system, asking the system to let us know that our lives have value. Jordan Neely was choked to death by someone who didn't care people was telling him to stop. Last week, the jury they couldn't decide on the top charge, but they come back this week and they give up on us. The family's hurt. I promised this family that we would get justice. We're still going to do that. We're going to move forward with our suit. The district attorney did a good job, but the jury in this case let us down. So now here's what we have. We have a call to action.
Oh, good.
Because you have to do something with this anger and with this rage. Our call to action is to take care of each other. We can't rely on outside people. If we see someone asking for food, we have to take the responsibility to give it to them. If we see someone cold, to give them a coat. If we see someone going through something, to ask them if they're okay.
Surprisingly based. Hey, maybe we shouldn't rely on outsiders, and maybe we should try to rely on ourselves in our own community. And we shouldn't rely on handouts from the others. Maybe we should help ourselves and provide ourselves things. And maybe we should help our own community first. Is this guy secretly conservative? I could sign him up for a Republican newsletter. This is surprisingly based.
That's how we help each other, because we can't rely on the system to do it for us. And clearly, if we get to this point, it's too late. We have to be there for each other, and that's our call to action. Everybody that's pissed off at this verdict, I challenge you to go outside today and help one person.
Right on.
That's my challenge.
Help people.
If you're angry, if you're hurt, go help one person. That's how we beat the system. That's how we turn this around, by being there for each other.
Right on.
Wow, that was surprisingly conservative. Apparently, what we should do is we should go out into our communities, and when one of members of our community needs help, maybe we should help them ourselves. And we should instill a sense of community in which we help each other and restore the social fabric. Is this guy trying for a position in the Trump administration? Because it's sounding pretty good, man. I'm just saying.
Just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we gonna do, people? What's gonna happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Let's do something about it. Too often, we have Eric Garner's mother here.
Gwen call.
There's too often this is happening, where we're left alone in this society. We got to stop that. We have to change how we impact each other. Jordan came on that subway car. The first thing he asked for was food, and he was killed.
Okay. There you are leaving out some critical details along the way. So you're somewhat straw manning this, I have to say. The first thing he did was ask for food, and then he was killed. Both those statements are technically correct. There are some other pertinent details that might be required to further influence our analysis, but sure.
And the person who killed him was not held responsible. We cannot allow this to keep happening.
Come on, mother. I got you. Oh.
Looks like the police are attacking protesters.
Good morning, everyone. Here we stand once again in front of this unjust system. I stood here 10 years ago because they did not give justice to my son with the chokehold. I fought hard to get the anti-chokehold bill passed, which did pass. But it shouldn't only be for police officers, it should be for civilians also. No one deserves to be choked to death. And you know, we're in that courtroom and people are cheering for the verdict. They made the loudest noise, the judge did nothing. But when his father spoke out, they put him out the courtroom. Is that justice or what? We can't allow this to keep going on. We have to fight this system. That's what I had to do. I had to fight to get the little justice that I got. I got one police officer fired. There's more that need to be fired. But I tell this family, do not give up. Because that's what they want you to do. They want to discourage you. Just like they tried to discourage me, but 10 years later, I'm still fighting. And I'm not only fighting for myself, I'm fighting for families like yourself. That's why I have to come out when this injustice is done. If this had been the other way, if your family had murdered this so-called innocent guy now, it would have been a different story. he would have been in jail or would have never came out. But they don't do the same to us. It's two justice systems.
You know that.
And we have to stop this. And the only way that we can stop it is to stand together. Those of us who are against what happened, we have to speak up. We can't treat this just like another news story, not another press conference. We have to speak up, and stand up. So I just say today, we did not get justice once again. And I am saddened. I am truly saddened by this situation because it keeps on happening and no one is standing accountable for their actions. So that means that any civilian could get on the train if they feel threatened and they could choke someone out and they're going to get found not guilty, just like today. This sets a precedent.
Well, no, it doesn't really set a precedent. It's a very old precedent. There's no new legal things here except for maybe the dropping of count one, which unfortunately now we don't get to resolve. Well, fortunate for Daniel Penny, unfortunate for the lawyers who want to geek out on such shit, but good for Daniel. We don't get to figure out whether or not that was legal or not for them dropping count one. I looked into this all weekend, by the way, trying to figure this out because I was trying to figure out what exactly was going on in New York. So we're going to take a moment to break here because I was trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this. Well, you can only consider count one and you can't consider count two. What the hell is that? And what it turned out to be after looking into it is that New York has a rule that is not been widely adopted. I've never heard of it before, but New York has adopted a rule, basically this anti-compromise verdict rule. So what New York was trying to solve, the problem they were trying to solve, apparently, was we're concerned that if we have, multiple different things, is it second degree murder? Is it first degree manslaughter? Is it second degree manslaughter? Is it criminally negligent homicide, right? New York's got murder in like 8 different flavors, right? So if we charge like 4 of these flavors of murder, okay, what their concern was, apparently, was that the jury would compromise to reach a verdict rather than, give out a verdict for the top count. So, some people want, murder in the first degree. Some people only want criminally negligent homicide. And so the idea is that they agree in the middle, right? It's like, well, maybe we'll agree for voluntary manslaughter, which New York didn't really like that. They didn't really like that possibility. For example, we saw this in the Black Swan trial relatively recently, where I thought it was murder in the second degree and the charge of manslaughter, it didn't really seem to make sense. It's like if you thought the only issue is self-defense or lack thereof, right? Does she properly possess self-defense? Which incidentally, that's a white girl, by the way. And I thought she was guilty. So I'm not sure what that says about the racism of anything, but just to be noted. But like they're concerned about that. So New York passed a law that said, okay, we're going to solve this problem by when we have multiple different grades of murder or multiple different grades of anything, you have to resolve the top count before you can move on. And so the idea, therefore, is it will prevent compromise verdicts. If the people have proven their top count, they're entitled to it. And if they haven't, then they're not entitled to it. And so either way, the idea is we're going to ensure that. And so when the jury was deadlocked on count one, the normal answer was to mistrial the whole thing. And then you could bring a different charge set a different time if you wanted, but the normal thing was to mistrial the whole thing. But what this judge did, which appears to be unique, was to say, okay, I'm going to accept the dismissal of count one, which then sort of flies in the whole face of that anti-compromise verdict thing. Because if the whole point was to prevent juries from being like, well, we'll compromise, is the government, how is that working when the government now is dismissing the top count? So the whole thing sort of flies in the face of the rule that New York has created for itself. The whole thing flies in the face of the rule that New York has created for itself, which led to very interesting and somewhat obvious appeal possibilities if he was convicted. The somewhat unfortunate thing, I suppose, for the law geeks out there is now we don't know whether or not it's legal. But on the plus side, for any law students out there, you now have yourselves one hell of a basis for a note for your law journal, if you're so inclined. So if you've been looking for something for your general writing requirement, if you've been looking for something for a note, you now have, here's something for your note. Is this legal? And now you can go write about it for your law review. Exciting. But yeah.
We can't let this happen. If the police can't do it, the civilians can't do it either. And I just want you to stand with this family. This family needs you right now.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to Dre. I'm sorry to Chris. I'm sorry that America has failed you. You've come here, you've shown discipline, you've shown strength, you've shown love, you've shown how to carry yourself with composure when you're facing this machine, this American judicial system that cannibalizes our people. But I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm gonna say it loud and clear. Let the marchers march and let the steppers step. Let the marchers march and let the steppers step.
Sorry. It's like I don't know what step means. I don't know what that means. What step means. I don't know what the stepper step means. That confuses me. I understand marching. I understand what a march is. I don't know what a step is. What is a step? Is he encouraging us to get our steps on? Is he encouraging us to get an Apple Watch and make sure we get our 10,000 steps a day? Is he encouraging us to use the Stairmaster? Is he encouraging us to go to an aerobics class and use that sort of plastic platform where you stand up and stand down? What exactly is he doing? How many steps is he doing? Also, by the way, just not for nothing. I have questions. What is stepping? Okay.
You want to do something about this verdict? Then you go into your neighborhood and you promote Black unity. Black people, we are all we have. This system protects every other group except for the very people that built this country.
Say it.
Every group that comes here gets privileges, gets benefits, except for the very people whose fingerprints are on the bricks that built this country. There is no love for black
The Masons?
people. There's no love in the system. How can you make a moral appeal to a people that have no moral code? How can you preach love to racists? That got Dr. King killed. How can you promote love to a nation that is built on theft and genocide?
That's right.
What we preach is unity.
Are you preaching unity? I'm not feeling particularly united right now. I have to be honest.
Black unity.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is rich. I'm sorry. I cut him off too early. I'm preaching unity, black unity. Oh, okay. All right. Fine. Okay.
Stop begging this system to justify our lives. Stop begging this system for justice. When things happen to you, you step up and defend yourself. Just like everybody.
When things happen to you, you step up and defend yourself. So self-defense is back on the menu, boys. I'm confused.
else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes. We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump
The
up
Panthers?
and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us? I'm tired. I know you're looking for us to be like, oh, go and march, go and march. No, this weekend, I want
But you said let the marchers march. You said it earlier yourself. About 3 minutes ago, you said the marchers should march, and now you're against marching. Well, are you for marching or are you against it? I'm so confused.
to hold a community event everywhere from the Bronx to Houston to Seattle.
Is it too much for me to contradict? Is it too much for me to point out the contradictions in his own speech, or is that just like taking pot shots? Is that ethical? And be like, wait a second, no, that doesn't work. And then it's like unity, black unity. Let the steppers step and let the marchers march. Except now it's not the time for marching. Wait, what? Okay, I'm gonna keep doing this. It entertains me.
Black people whole community event and talk about what you need and talk about how to fix your issues. If the black politicians come, don't let them in. If they come, do not let them come and take over your fight for justice. Why? Because out of all the black politicians who said something about this initially, none of them came to court. I'm sick of these people playing with our lives, our children's lives. Black people, if you're serious about yourselves, you'll take your education serious, you will open schools in your community, you will take your health serious and teach your people about health.
All right.
You will take your self-defense serious.
All right.
And you will defend yourselves in your communities.
Okay.
You want to take the information that's disseminated seriously? Then you will start your own media outlets.
Well, that's a good idea.
America knew that Daniel Penny lied.
I like all these ideas. These are good ideas. Let's get more involved in our community. Let's defend ourselves. Let's provide clothing to our own homeless. Let's stand up ourselves and provide in our own communities. Wow. Taking initiative in our own communities, building our own communities up, man. Does this guy want to be a member of the Republican Party? He's got some ideas. I'd like to subscribe to his newsletter.
To the judges 5 times, lied to the cops 5 times. If they knew that all the people jumped off the train who were afraid within 30 seconds, and Daniel Penny choked them for 5.5 minutes, if they knew the truth, everybody would be on the side of justice except for the racists. The people who are happy that Jordan Neely is dead. Unify yourselves. We will be putting out information on how to unify yourselves, but this ain't about us. This is about justice. So they're not.
Well, no, it literally is about us. If we're putting out messages on how to unify us, you can't really say I'm putting out messages on how to unify us, but it's not about us. No, it kind of is. That's in the nature of what you're trying to do fundamentally. Okay.
There'll be no more Eric Gardners. So there'll be no more Jordan Neelys. So we will be a united front and a community. America will never save black people. Politicians will never save black people.
Yeah.
Only black people will save black people.
Based. Wow, we can't depend on the government. Wow, we can't depend on the politicians. Man, they've really let us down. It sounds like we have to look after our own and take care of ourselves and bring ourselves up in our own communities and bring our own communities and make them better ourselves. Based.
Hawk Newsom, HAWK-NEWSOME.
I love this. You become so racist, you become conservative again. This is a new and exciting chapter. This guy is so racist, he manages to somehow become conservative.
Shavonna Newsom, CHIVONA, I'm the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York.
Of course you are.
And I'm a devout Christian.
Are you?
In my Bible, thou shalt not kill. In
The commandment is thou shalt not murder, by the way, not thou shalt not kill. And I'm pretty sure that God approves of self-defense, but okay.
the Torah, thou shalt not kill. In Buddhism, in Hinduism, thou shalt not kill a living thing. But America
It's also not
has
that
no
broad.
moral code. America has no soul. Our bloods have paved the streets of this nation since its inception. It was foolish of us to think that a black man would get justice in the system designed to keep him oppressed. My heart bleeds for the Neely family. My heart bleeds for his father, who sat in front of me every single day and prayed for justice for his son. There is no one coming to save black people, or else we wouldn't live in these ghettos, we wouldn't be in these prisons, and we would be further along than we are.
Based.
We wouldn't be at the absolute bottom. So forgive me for being jaded and cynical, but once we saw those non-white jurors, we knew that this case was over.
No.
Once we saw those non-white jurors, we knew this case was over. So you wanted an all-black jury? Well, there was this case called Batson. About that. Okay.
Non-white jurors. How could there not be an uproar that the same person who got off
9 white jurors, not non-white. Okay, so 9 white. Either way, though, it's like, oh, well, the problem was the 9 white jurors. So we wanted no white jurors on our jury. I refer you back to Batson.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who got off O.J. Simpson, was used here.
O.J. Simpson is white now? It's like, how do those thoughts go together? This is the person who got off Kyle Rittenhouse. This is the person that got off O.J. Simpson. Is O.J. Simpson white now? Because he got off? I'm confused. I don't understand.
And shame on you, celebrities and politicians who claim not to be racist, because the racists spoke loud and clear. John McCain's daughter, she had something to say. I think she incited a riot for the right. Phil Mickelson, he had...
There was an incitement for a riot for the right? I am not getting these memos. I am not getting these memos. Is that still a thing that is to be that's happening? Where do I get my invitation? When is the riot for the right? Is it a BYOB thing? When and where? Asking for a friend.
Had something to say. Kid Rock donated $3 million. And if you look on social media, if you look at the hatred spewed across against us, against black people, against a man who was sick, because when there's a crisis of drugs in America, I'm sorry, it's only a crisis when it's a white person, an opioid crisis. Jordan was labeled a drug addict and labeled a crackhead. The only crime that Jordan Neely was guilty of was the color of his skin.
Come on.
But luckily for Daniel Penny, his skin was not like Jordan's, because you honestly wouldn't have seen our face. The NYPD would have arrested him after 3 hours.
I have pretty good evidence that is in fact not true. From this case, there were 2 other individuals who were involved in the physical restraint of the deceased. The no.
The justice system would have found him guilty.
No, again, no. I have about as direct a comparison as is possible to make. Normally, it's pretty hard to make these kind of comparisons because it's really hard to compare one case to another, because every case sort of has its own life and its own eccentricities. So how much is this case like Kyle Rittenhouse? How much is it like, fill in the case of your choice is debatable. But you know what's a lot like this case? You know what's suspiciously like this case? This case. This case is suspiciously like this case. It's the same case. And it involves two other individuals who were not charged and were in fact not convicted. Arguably because they were black. Did you not get the memo? I got that memo. I got we didn't prosecute the other two guys. Not only would Daniel Penny not have been put on trial and convicted if he wasn't black, he wasn't put on trial and convicted because he was black. It just so happened his name wasn't Daniel Penny in that situation. What are you talking about? I have a pretty good counterfactual for you from this case, from this exact case. It's a one-to-one comparison. It's pretty good, man.
On this jury, because to be real, they didn't even try. Once the lesser charge was removed, they came back an hour later and said it was deadlock. Less than an hour and 20 minutes later, they said not guilty. These wonderful white people, I hope they celebrate their Christmas while the Neely family is praying and asking God for comfort. Goddamn them and goddamn America.
Yay. Okay. I'm getting real I'm a pimp and also only you can prevent forest fire vibes at the exact same time here. Pressing on.
And when I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, because thou givest him not warning, nor speaketh to warn the wicked of his wicked ways, his blood shall I require at thy hand.
Thank you, Pimp Smokey, for that, whatever that was.
I see.
Thank you, everybody.
My name is Rev Ron McHenry. I'm with the National Action Network. We are outraged by this verdict that we've heard today. We understand that Daniel Penny jumped on the train and choked out Jordan Neely. We understand that he was homeless. We understand that he cried out for food. But if we allow for regular citizens to choke out anybody on the train just because they feel uncomfortable, then what sort of precedent are we setting for the rest of America?
It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more than that.
Lynched in this age, we cannot allow for an era of injustice to continue. Even though this verdict did not go the way we wanted, we will continue to mobilize. We will continue to fight in the way Dr. King fought, in a nonviolent way. So we urge everyone that is listening to mobilize, to galvanize together, because the fight is not yet finished for justice. Someone argued in the courtroom that no justice, no peace is a threatening chant. Dr. King said this, that peace is not merely the absence of tensions, but the presence of justice. If we can't see justice by this system, then there is no peace in America, and we will continue to fight until we see the peace that Dr. King talked about is realized in this day and age. Justice for the Neely family.
Okay. Well, those were interesting remarks. Some of them surprisingly based. Some of them very surprisingly based. But those were interesting. Yeah. Apparently, there is a suspect that is currently being questioned with regards to the CEO murder case. It'll be interesting to see how they choose to go about that one in terms of prosecution or lack thereof. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I'll read your super chats. Annie L said $10. Celebration super chat. Thank you, Annie. The Peanut Gallery for $10 says, there must have been a hold on the guilty side and they gave up over the weekend. Yeah, something like that. Phantom Lord, it also implies the split was significantly more for not guilty. Because, we didn't know. We didn't know what the split was. But the fact that they were able to resolve it so fast this morning implies that the holdouts were for guilty, not for not guilty. So, Phantom Lord DJ H08 says, I'm betting Oakland, California will riot. Oakland will riot over anything. Jefferson C Post says, hope they took care of escorting the jury out. I'm sure they did. Bulldog Mom has been a member for 5 months, said, Jordan Williams, 2023 Mr. BLM man. You forgot about that case, Mr. BLM. PJ Wolf Weimers has been a member for 7 months. And Belle Feinstein said, I stand with the Marine on this one. I stand with Daniel. Absolutely. Tony P gifted 10 gift memberships. Charitard gave $2 to say, did she bring a pack of cigs too? Gene Angry Penguin for $5 said, mental illness is difficult to deal with, especially paired with an addictive disorder. But the family found him long before there was a system involved. Right. I mean, you don't necessarily need to blame the deceased. That isn't really what's required. What's really required is the threat to the person that is using the force, right? So the person's moral culpability in being the threat isn't necessarily the thing. If someone if there's a threat to my life, I have a right to save my life. Your own moral culpability in creating that threat isn't really the thing. The thing is that I'm morally justified in saving my own life. So that's really the thing, but thank you. Alan Parker, very long time contributor to the channel. Appreciated. Gifted 20 gift memberships. JPC said, should there be riots? Can he be charged with inciting a riot? No. Incitement is a very, very narrow charge, and I prefer to keep it that way. Brandenburg is your charge. Incitement requires it to be direct and imminent and immediate lawlessness. And it needs to be direct. It needs to be, commanding people to take up arms. And no, his language was way too vague for that. I interpret incitement fairly narrowly. I like freedom of speech. I tend to interpret things to allow for the most freedom of speech. That's the reason why, right? And I just want to be as consistent as possible. So I tend to interpret incitement fairly narrowly. Ace for $5 said, Black lives only matter when money can be made off the corpse. That's the real slogan for the organization. Not saying you're wrong. Justin Credible for $2 says, does he have a case for malicious prosecution? No, sadly not. No. Well, although he might hypothetically have a case for deprivation of civil rights claim, he could try to sue on the basis that he was prosecuted because he was white, or that white was a contributing factor. So he might have, it would be incredibly hard to prove. The DOJ would have an easier time bringing it criminally than he would have it bring it civilly. But he might be able to try to prove that he was prosecuted at least in part because he was white, and that's a no-no. You can't do that. So he might have he could hypothetically have some kind of 1983 claim. That's going to be incredibly difficult, but at least hypothetically, it would be easier for the DOJ to bring it criminally under 18 U.S.C. 242. I think. Not to say it would be easy, just easier. But there is something there. Thank you for your super chat. Baby Meatball has been a member for 17 months, and Snacks has been a member for 13 months. Thank you very much for your super chats. What's 1983? 42 U.S.C. 1983. It prevents anyone from acting under color of law to deprive someone of their civil rights. It's a federal statute. So, 42 U.S.C. 1983. And the criminal statute is 18 U.S.C. 242, as I mentioned. Tony 7682 for $5 says thoughts on whether the DOJ can bring a federal case against Bragg for conspiracy. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. I think there's a potential for a 242 claim. I'm a law genius. I know some of the laws. We've covered them before, so I know some of them by memory. Yeah. MJ Law says, given the 2 non-white people that helped restrain were not charged at all, there should be a decent argument the prosecution was only because he was white. Yeah. Particularly if the prosecution happened to tell any of those people things that could be, that would say that, like, we're not prosecuting you because you're black, or if they actually made it overt, and those people were called to testify. There's a possibility there. How do you hold out for manslaughter and acquit on involuntary manslaughter? Yeah, that's sort of what we were discussing at the beginning. It doesn't really make much sense legally, because if he's not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, he must be not guilty of apologize. Yeah, no, involuntary. It's not called involuntary manslaughter. You've confused me. It's called criminally negligent homicide. Yeah. If he's not guilty of criminally negligent homicide, he must be not guilty of manslaughter. So it doesn't really make much sense from a legal posture that they were able to reach a not guilty so fast. Like, if he's not guilty of the lesser included, he must be guilty of the greater, because the greater includes the lesser. That's what makes it, so it doesn't make much sense legally. But it either means that the one who was recalcitrant, like, gave up over the weekend and decided he couldn't fight anymore, or it means that the jury is really, really pissed and they're like, we just want to go home. They're really, really pissed that they were ignored, or they just want to go home, or something like that. But yeah, it doesn't make much sense legally. But yeah, I wonder how the DA feels right about now. That's the thing I want to know. How does the DA feel about this? Because I would think the DA must be feeling flabbergasted. The DA must be thinking to himself, what the hell just happened? Because they gave up their top count. The only really way the way that makes sense is they must have believed. It seems to me the DA must have believed that there were only like 1 or 2 holdouts who are not guilty. And that they felt assured of a guilty verdict. So I wonder if the DA's office feels like a bunch of chumps right now. That's what I'd like to know the answer to. Does the DA feel like a bunch of chumps? Because I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Let's take a look at some more stuff from outside the courtroom. Trump's DOJ might get interested in this. Trump's DOJ could get interested. This could be fun. Yeah. I was just seeing if there's any further like updates. There doesn't seem to be any updates. What's my speculation with regards to DA's assurances of their own case? As an outsider, it looks like they brought a weak case to court in hopes of scoring brownie points. Yeah. I mean, they initially didn't want to bring the case, and then they decided to, for what seems like racially based reasons. Are these people blind to this fact the subway can be virtually unrideable due to violence and disturbances? I guess. There is no particular indication of the DA and how they reacted to the news. All the sane and rational people have gone down to New York. A lot of them have, that's for sure. I'm not exactly like super eager to go back to New York City. I've never lived there. I've been there a couple times. I always find it to be a bit much. It's a bit much. When you're surrounded by buildings that tall, it can be a little bit claustrophobic outside because you're surrounded by all these like really tall buildings, and it can feel a little, it can feel like a little much. Tony7682 for $5 says it's presumably academic at this point, but recourse would Penny have on appeal if he were found guilty? The recourse would be for a new trial, presumably, or the basis of a double jeopardy claim. It's like it was so prejudicial that to allow him to retry would be unfair. So if he were convicted, he would have had the basis for a pretty reasonable appeal, and the remedy would have either been new trial or case goes away because it was so prejudicial. Are you used to it? Fair. Let's just hope the feds don't charge Penny with violating Neely's civil rights. I hadn't even considered that possibility. Yeah, I hadn't even considered that possibility. I'm not sure they can, but leave it to the feds to think of something. An American BLM girl was posting a lynching happened here ads in the subway. Yeah, that's a very dishonest interpretation of reality. Didn't they do it to Chauvin with respect to Floyd? Sure. Yeah. Of course, Chauvin was acting as a police officer at the time, which made it a little bit easier. Will the acquittal help him in a civil lawsuit? Not particularly. No. The civil lawsuit is a lesser standard. A guilty verdict would have been really devastating, but and not guilty doesn't really do very much. So no. Did the family sue New York City subway system? I'm unaware of whether or not they've sued the subway system. They might sue them at a later point. They might sue the city. It wouldn't surprise me. Try to eke out some money from the city. Wouldn't surprise me if they filed suit. Is the basis of a civil lawsuit as dumb as it sounds? Wrongful death is your theory. You have to prove it to preponderance, which is 51%. So, just more likely than not. And that and also just negligence will be fine as opposed to criminal negligence. So it's much easier standard. Do I still practice law? I do the occasional consulting, but I don't practice law full time. I occasionally have someone ask me for help, or occasionally do a consulting. Someone asked me to help them write on a Supreme Court petition I helped with. But yeah, sometimes I do a little pickup work. But YouTube is basically my full-time gig. Can he file bankruptcy if he loses a civil suit? I'm not an expert on bankruptcy law, so I'm going to take a pass. I think the answer depends on whether it was intentional or not. So I think is the answer, but or if there are punitive damages. I don't think you can discharge punitive damages. But I'm not an expert on bankruptcy law. Bankruptcy can discharge some court stuff, but not all of it. So that's why I was pausing. So I'm like, I don't know for sure. All right, Rob sent your way. You mean like from Friday night? I saw that he sent people my way to view my video. That was very nice of him. I wouldn't have minded, incidentally, if he had played the video on his own channel. I wouldn't have minded, but I appreciate that he spoke positively of me. That was nice. Rusty for $5 says, I wish I could have been there to ask the family why Jordan was homeless. Why was he hungry? If they're all hungry and homeless too. Fair question. Fair question. Man in Pennsylvania is a person of interest. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Get a lawyer. Don't talk to the police. No good will come from talking to the police. Can Penny sue New York police for not performing CPR? No, absolutely not. Penny has no basis for a claim. Jennifer says for $10, thank you for showing us this. You're welcome. All right. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off because we've sort of covered everything there needs to be covered and we've gotten the good news. So Daniel Penny is free, as he should be. And he will now have to face a civil lawsuit, which, could go any number of ways. So we'll see how that's going to proceed. But yeah, I think this was a correct verdict. I think he acted justly. And we'll see how it all pans out for the moment. I'm going to go do some elliptical now, and then maybe I'll be back on later with some more stuff. I was thinking about doing the case that Rob did on Friday night, that one dealing with whether or not withholding acts can be violence, which I would think the answer is no. I wouldn't think that withholding acts could be violence. But I thought maybe we could perhaps watch that Supreme Court case, or I still have to do the sentencing of what's her name, Ferris or whatever her name is. People still want me to do that sentencing because they're like, oh, it's even wilder than Boone. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that and see if that's interesting. But I'm going to sign off for now. I hope you have a good day. Until later, my friends, I hope all is well. Cheers for now, my friends, and goodbye.